Hello, everyone. We are live on stage or at home, as I think most of us are this morning or afternoon. I don't know if you're following up with us from Brazil or from Europe, but it is a pleasure having you here with us this morning/afternoon. My name is Isabella Godoy. I am here representing Vita, which is the main sponsor for this webinar event. And we are here with Kim Had, who is an information designer representative from Stiebe, the law firm from the Netherlands. Kim, it is a pleasure to have you here with us, and we look very much forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Isabella. Thank you for inviting me here as well. Yeah.
Thank you. So, just for a little context from you who's following up with us, Kim and I met during a few, I think actually quite a few different legal design events in Europe. I remember meeting you in Berlin and then again in Helsinki. So, we've had a lot of opportunities to exchange content on legal design and information design applicable to law. And we'll get to that in just a second. But first, Kim, I remember you told me a little bit about your experience on different information design, which wasn't necessarily related to law in particular. I think you've been involved in more expert information in the past. So, can you tell us a little bit about how your trajectory brought you from the design field into law, and what was that in between that got you doing information design for legal?
Thank you. It has been quite a journey. I studied journalism and mainly visual journalism about 20 years ago. Started working for a few different Dutch newspapers as an infographic maker and information designer. And from there, I moved on information design on different topics, so medical, but also corporate, financial. And along the way, I was asked to join Stiebe on a freelance basis, Stiebe, the law firm I'm still working for, just to see how legal design would work with an in-house designer. When I started working at Stiebe, there were about 3 law firms in the Netherlands who were trying out the possibilities of having an in-house designer and just to see what it could add to the what added value it could be. And that's the way I started working at Stiebe about 8 years ago. And within, I think, 2 weeks, we realized that in-house design was that important that I switched from a freelance base to just a contract within Stiebe, and have never gone. I'm still there, and I still love it as much as I did like the first weeks I started working there. It's a big adventure, and it's still an adventure. So, yeah.
It's very nice to see that there's room in this community for people who come outside of the legal field in particular, because a lot of us lawyers, we tend to then start learning design and then start understanding principles and information design and trying to make it applicable ourselves. But it is very refreshing to see that there's also room for designers working with legal. And I don't know if you feel perhaps after 8 years doing this, not anymore, but perhaps in the beginning, was it difficult for you to understand legal jargon and all of the intricacies that legal has? As a designer, it might be more challenging for you to understand legal itself than it is for lawyers.
I think when I started, I did have quite a lot of experience in design as well already. And the main thing I realized quite early on was that it's about what you are offering. And I take my job serious on an expert level as I take like the content of I'm working with serious on an expert level, but I'm not an expert. I'm not a legal expert. That's not my job. My job is to do the design part, but I have to communicate with experts. And within information design, if you're working with medical content or you're working with financial content, it's about expert content always. So in some way, I already had a lot of experience working with experts, with people who know like exactly like the best in the job, and knowing exactly what the content is, but they are the only ones, and we are working for the group around it who needs to be needs the access as well, and that's where design comes in. So I never try to be the expert, but I try to understand the expert. So yeah.
It is great that you mentioned experts and that you positioned lawyers as expert themselves, because I think one of the things that we do as lawyers is not seeing ourselves as experts because we deal with other experts. So we have engineering experts, medical experts, finance experts who assess us in our cases, but we tend to forget that we are also experts of a complex subject ourselves, and that we ourselves might also need some help in translating this to other users, other people who aren't necessarily used to this type of information, which is a work that we naturally do with different expert opinions. So when we're talking engineering cases, it is very common for lawyers to act as kind of the translator between the complex information we're receiving from the engineers and to our judges, tribunals, etc. But we tend to forget that we also need to do this effort. And it's very nice to see that we have people working in this position. And I really like that you came from visual journalism, because working with infographics, first, it sounds very nice. I am very much a fan of infographics. So it is just amazing to see. And then I can see a lot of applications from that in the legal sector. But since you mentioned experts and the complexity of the things that we do in legal, what we're here today talking about is exactly that: how to demonstrate complex topics, be that legal within itself or perhaps something that is tangible or tangent to legal. So I think you have a little presentation to show us to start discussing this topic. I'll be
Yeah.
here asking a few questions. And if you from the audience is also here willing to ask a few questions, don't be afraid to drop a comment, and we'll be eager to answer it as soon as we can. Worst case scenario, we'll just leave questions for the very end of our webinar and let Kim do her explanation. But I'm very curious to see what you have prepared for us, Kim.
Yeah. Okay, then I will switch to my presentation. As Isabella already said, I love the way she introduced this, the art of clarity in complex legal cases, because that is actually what I'm looking into quite a lot. As an information designer, I am an information designer. I'm not a legal designer, especially because what we were talking about already, you have experts in certain kinds of content, and my expertise is in making complex information clearer. That is something I've been working on for quite some time in different practices. Since 8 years, it's mainly in the legal practice, where I try to add value to the practice itself by information design, but also to add value by participating as a design expert in legal teams. There's really into the teams of lawyers working on cases. They add me as well, with my design expertise, to join them. And we are working on a very equal level in these teams. Just to show you what I've been working on before, it has not been legal for a long time. So I've been working for popular science magazines, but also for medical, not necessarily magazines, but websites explaining, for example, certain operations you have to undergo when you have a certain kind of cancer, or for the financial sector, for ABN AMRO, on their projects, just explaining and showing in a more visual way what their projects what kind of projects were going on, or indeed for Stibbe, one of the first visuals I did for them was on a case in which there were a lot of different court cases coming together in one big project for PostNL, our big mailing company, big mailing. And also just timelines is something we do a lot. Sometimes it can be quite easy, but very important to explain. And it takes sometimes also a bit of time to find out how to put the information in the right way. So this looks like quite an easy infographic, but it has a lot of thoughts behind it before it came to this visual.
Kim, just a quick heads up. We're not seeing your PowerPoint in presentation mode, so I've been on slide 1. I don't know if you've moved forward from that, but
yes,
we might be looking at the wrong screen.
Okay, so what shall we try? Because I'm on this screen now. I have it in, with me, it goes in presentation mode.
Perhaps you have to share a different window. Okay. That might be the issue for us.
Even with all the preparations.
It is just technology at its best.
Yeah, let's try another way. Share screen and then see if we can do something. I can try the complete screen, but then I have to change quickly to the PowerPoint. And how does this work?
Okay, now I do see your full screen, and I am looking at what I think is an infographic map.
Yeah, it's an infographic for a popular science magazine, as I explained earlier. I will go quickly through this because you may not have had the visuals, but you had the story behind it already. This is the visual for the medical website for ABN AMRO to explain more visual their projects they were working on and also how they were financing certain projects. And this is for Stibbe already, a court case who was divided in a lot of small court cases going on. And also the one of which I said that it may look easy, but there is a lot of thought behind to make it shown this way. And last but not least, we do work a lot. Let's say it this way: in my work, I'm working a lot with, of course, programs, especially for designing visuals, digital programs. But a lot of times, I just have to be aware of what lawyers or legal people are working with. For example, Excel is not very easy to use in a more visual way, but as Excel is very important for a lot of our clients, we do try to use it in ways that it's more visual, and in this way to make it also Excel more clear to use and to see what's the content about. Then about Stibbe. Stibbe is it's quite interesting, of course, to know that I'm working for a company or law firm which has quite a lot of practice areas. We do have arbitration, but also litigation. Public law is quite big with us, but also employment, pensions, and incentives. Corporate is also really important, and we are working in all these practice areas. there are two visual information designers within Stibbe, and every day we just move between all these practice areas. So you have the practice areas, then you have, of course, the legal operations within Stibbe, and we are part of the business development, marketing, and communication team. This is a decision we made that we are really making legal visuals. We could have been in the knowledge management and innovation team as well. I will explain that later a bit, but for us, business development, marketing, and communication is a very good location to be. And from there, we are making, basically just joining, sorry, I was just using the wrong key, joining teams of lawyers and making the connection with lawyers. That also shows that within our team of business development, marketing, and communication, the legal designers are basically the ones who are most involved in the legal part of the operations, considered to our other direct colleagues. And also we are just moving around the whole office the whole time, just depending on where the requests are, what the questions are, who's in need of legal visuals. What I see as possible design possibilities for legal design are mainly 4 areas: social awareness, knowledge innovation, data visualization, and visual storytelling. Within a law firm like Stibbe, social awareness is not something we are really working with. But knowledge innovation is something which is more part of the knowledge management and innovation team. And as legal visuals, we are part of it, but not really, because we are mostly at the end of the process. Really, the real, what people know often as a legal design process, working to an innovation and implanting it within the firm. What we are mostly busy with is data visualization and visual storytelling. These 4 things, I see the difference in the essence in the design process as we follow, because the legal design process is behind all these 4 areas, but the essence in the process is a bit different. Wherein social awareness is about finding out and connecting with the target group. You're often with a target group who has actually not really an idea about what's legal, what are the possibilities for them in the legal field, where knowledge innovation, data visualization, visual storytelling is more about clients or target groups who have some knowledge already about the legal field, and sometimes quite understand things already, but don't oversee the whole possibility, or need more deepening into the details of the possibilities, or sometimes just have to recognize that something which is happening in the legal field is something which is important for them, and to connect with it. This is something. This is a basis from which I try to explain to students, legal students, but also my colleagues, what we try to do with legal design within, for example, Stibbe, within a law firm. And that's, you can see also in, I'm always visualizing everything. So also this, it is all connected together. And that means that I say we don't use social awareness that much, but we work with things which come from processes in social awareness. And also when we make visuals or infographics, sometimes they move into presentations or in white papers. We call it ebooks, like explaining in long articles with visuals certain changes, for example, in legal. So it's all moving together, and it has some differences in what you want to be the end result, but it connects in every way. And that's also what I really like about legal design, but what I also find really difficult to explain to legal people, that it's not in rooms. It's a big world and it moves around all the time. There are not really borders within your work. And that's also, I think, the thing we really add as designers to, for example, a law firm, that we are not working within borders. We are just trying out everywhere and very holistic in the way we work, which sometimes is really a new way of working, it seems. But on other times, it's just like a lot of recognizing what lawyers are doing also already. So it's not, the difference aren't that big as we always think. It's just that you have to look from another way. It's a lot about another view.
I do have a question for you there, Kim, because I think as a lawyer, I might see that issue, or even in Vita during our projects, that's something that people might come across. Do you this lawyer is not understanding necessarily how it works or how it can be done and how the walls can be moved around? Do you feel like lawyers come to you with a preconceptualized idea of how they want something made, but that's not necessarily how it is best done for that job, or is it something else?
No, I think there's a, and yes, there is, almost always already an idea. And it's not necessarily a bad idea, but it's an idea which is not working. And often they are already realizing that their idea is not working. And they will come to us and say, okay, we have this idea, and even sometimes already a visual idea, but it doesn't really, there's something missing still. And that's where we come in, to try and to, well, open up and give different views on it. And it's really about looking at things in a bit different way, and also looking at things in a way as who is going to use it. Because what I find really interesting, coming from a background like visual journalism, which for journalism target groups are like target groups all the time. It's very interesting to see that lawyers are really so much into the content of something, of what the case they want to solve, that they just, it's not ignoring, it's just not realizing that there is a target group, there is a client who has certain needs as well. And to have this work and get the best result, you have to be aware what the needs are, and why something is not working and why something else is working, and why you should try this, or why not try this, for example. Because not every law case is visual. Like, you cannot use a visual. The visual is not like the solution always for it. So that's also. Are you still there, Isabel?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if you can see me while you're sharing your screen.
No, I cannot
Yeah,
see you.
I was just wondering myself as a lawyer if I've ever been resistant to those changes, because I feel like we get attached to our ideas and to our technical information. The last night I was just giving a lecture. It was a workshop lecture on legal design, and initially I saw how the students, law students themselves, were very attached to language still. They were reworking the terms and conditions of a major streaming company. And the first ideas were all still related to language. Like, how can we simplify the language? How can we, they were even doing the effort to adapt it to a target group. They did have personas to work for,
Yeah.
and that helped a little. But the initial idea and the very first efforts were all language related. They didn't immediately go to visuals. And when I realized that, I commented like, why are you so attached to the written language or spoken language. Why can't you do something different? And then they started bursting their bubbles and going through like visual ideas, whether it was like infographics or creating an app or even creating like a game journey that kids could follow through while going through the terms and conditions. So I feel like as lawyers, we are kind of very attached to the language. It is hard for us to move on to the visualization of it. And once we do, it is again hard to be rid of our own biases as experts of, well, I initially understood this as it was, so now it is difficult for me to see how this is not satisfactory for others. And
Yeah.
this is very hard to do, I think, when you're designing anything for anyone. Just trying to be away from your own persona and understanding that your target audience might not be understanding things as you are. So it is fun to see how you work through all of this as well.
Yeah, I think the most important task I see myself having as a designer is filling up the void between the target group and the expert, and mainly also sometimes being the glue. So we don't have like as an expert, it's obvious you want to work with language if you have always been working with language or with text, and it's your best way to explain yourself to, because that's the way you have got your expert information, and also the way it's easiest to just like move on from there again, and just like moving to the next level in some way. But sometimes the next level isn't the level which is very open to text. And yes, we are looking at the levels, like what can the level be, and work from there to the content back. And that's I don't have this. I have not learned all the expert content you have as a lawyer. So in some way that's a burden, but also in some way it's like I mean it's not a burden, but it's I'm freer to move around it because I don't have a background in it, but it's also a burden because I really need you to do this together. For example, does that mean that, does it say something? Or do you understand what I try to to tell?
Yes, yes, I understand it perfectly. And it's interesting that as lawyers, because our base material is text, it is very easy for us to work with text. But, and I think your presentation will get to this point very soon, when we're talking about other problems, like, and we deal with complex litigations and arbitrations, or even sometimes contracts about themes that are not necessarily only legal. How do you explain complex topics that are not text based? Like,
Yeah.
have you ever seen people explaining how a wine tastes, but then tasting it yourself and realizing that that description did not match your imaginary of it at all? And then imagine describing a color or describing the size of a rock. Like all of those things, they're very visual and they're complex to explain in text. The text actually makes it harder to explain. And so it is understanding, actually it is fun to see that we can bring those other assets into legal and leverage them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. Do you want me to go on with the first case to show?
Absolutely, do move forward.
Okay. This is a case it's already from 2018, but it's a very still one of my favorite visuals. It was a litigation case. The most important problems there are was about property taxes for a wastewater treatment plant. I still love the fact that as practice area taxes, which is always like, if you ask somebody outside legal about, well, I don't think it's very, how you call it, sexy to say that you're a tax lawyer. But I love it because it's very interesting, and it has a logic to it, which is very interesting for me to try to visualize. In this case, it was also something which was really just like down to earth. And property taxes is also something we all, everybody who has property has something to do with property taxes. And in its basis, it is not that difficult. Like, you have property and you pay a certain amount depending on the function of the property, if it's a private property or a public property. The rules are very clear in some way. But that also means that if some other like factors are added, it gets quite complex quite easily. And here it was quite complex because it was about a wastewater treatment plant. And wastewater, when you treat it, it ends up in being clear, clean water, but also there are more products coming from it. And especially now, we are trying to work more sustainable, but also more aware of not using things in the right way, and also innovation makes it possible. Wastewater, I should call it a sewage treatment plant, is not only delivering clear water. That's not the most important part of it anymore. No, the important part is all the products which is giving. And that was not really something which was already clear in the rulings on the property tax, and which was giving a problem. And this case was actually a case which was also part of case law. There was a lot of district control boards, different ones in the Netherlands, who were facing the same problem, but there was only one who took it up to the judge just to see how to move on in future on this. And that also meant that there was an ongoing legal procedure. So that went already to different court cases. It went up to the highest court and was sent back to the lowest court. And basically, the time when I started, when I was involved in this, it had been going on for 8 years already. And the first thing the lawyer who involved me said, like, well, we have written this down in so many different ways, like our idea on it, why we think it is this way. We just don't know how we are going to write it down another time in, again, a different way. We're just out of possibilities. So maybe you can help us in a visual way. And it was a big maybe, because they weren't really sure. They couldn't see what visualization could add to it. So it was really like, please try and see where we can get, which was really interesting, because that means that it's an adventure to go on. And also, I like things who are complex and who are not clearly yet having a result or a possibility to a result. So that made it a really interesting case as well. And as I already said, the verdict was also important for future decisions on tax for wastewater treatment plants, which also was the background that they went on trying to get their point accepted by the judge. And the point we're talking about was that a sewage treatment plant is quite a big thing with different buildings and different big amount of ground needed to have these buildings on. And the municipality is the one who decides which of these buildings pay which amount of property tax, like which percentage. And there is a ruling in the Netherlands which gives an exemption for works intended for treatment of sewage and other wastewater and managed by bodies, institutions. But that basically says that if you're just what is part of the building to make clean water is free of property taxes. And the municipality said, like, okay, you have like this big amount of buildings, and few of them we don't see as necessary to clear the water. And the water board, of course, said no, the whole group is necessary, and they couldn't agree on it. And it was really difficult to explain in text why you need all these buildings to get clear water. And that's where I got in to try to see if we could make the process visual to explain it. And what makes it difficult, this is a picture of, well, the whole building, is that, of course, you get clear water, but you also get, as they call sludge, which they use for other reasons, but also, for example, gas, of which they make electricity. So there are more products, and the municipality said, like, the first products, getting clear water, that's clear for us. That's something. No property taxes on the buildings who are needed for clear water. But the other two, we don't see it as a part of the process to clear water. So we think that you can get clear water without these two things as well, part of the process. So we just don't want to give these exemptions on property taxes on these parts of the building who are taking the sludge out of the sewage water or the gas. Well, in the Netherlands, just to explain, you start with one of the 11 district courts. When you want to appeal, you go to the Court of Appeal. There are 4 in the Netherlands. And if then again you want to appeal, it goes to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, as I understand, as a non-lawyer, is not necessarily taking a decision, as is looking if the process has gone in the right way properly. And if they decide not, it's sent back to the district court, and the whole circle starts again. And that was what actually was happening. And we were going to district court again, I think, in this case. So, and one of the parts in which the municipality said, like, well, we don't see it as the whole area as part of the clearing of water process, is also because in the Netherlands there had been another case in which it was about the national railway, who wanted their stations to be exemptions of the property taxes, and they lost that case because they were told that to move a train from A to B, you don't necessarily need stations in the process. The train can move from A to B without stations. So, and there was something which was really mixing up with our case, and it was really difficult to see what is actually the difference between this case and our case, and trying not in text but also visualize it, because it's also a process going on. So how were we going to do this? And it was, for me, also very interesting, because it always got a more philosophical idea about what is a process and what is part of a process, apart from visualizing things. So to work with, I had a few things. this is like on a map of all the buildings in the planned area. The red buildings are the ones of which the municipality said like they are not part of the water clearing process. And on the other side is like a Excel visualization of how the process would move from sewage water to clear water, and which buildings, which processes were part of it. Well, of course, this is not really telling something other than there are some buildings who are not considered part, and there is a process going on which is visually very difficult to understand. There's even no indication what color means what. So I had long conversations with experts at the plant to explain to me how this process was going and what meant what within it. And from there, I started trying to visualize the process again, but in a way that would work for us. And first, we tried a few things which were really even making the case more complex. So that wasn't really how it would work. And from there on, we slowly moved on to like, well, it's more circular. You end up with things, but things are moving from one thing in another thing as well. And that was actually really also the essence of our case, that we wanted to show that something like water, sludge, and gas, you could not like have that in different parts. It was all part of one process. You couldn't get clear water without getting sludge or gas or electricity from the gas. So that was what we really wanted to show, and it took a while to find out how to show it, but we got in the end to this visualization, which is a schematic view of the wastewater treatment. You have the process components, you have the buildings in it, they are combined with each other. There is the map, so you can know, okay, this is where it's happening on. But the most important thing is the process itself. And it's like, of course, explained in text as well, because it's really difficult if you don't have an idea of what's happening. How do you clear water? How it's going? So we made a very simple explanation, also going through the visualization with this explanation. And we said also, like, if you look, you can see there is parts who are not part. So we decided not to show it in the plan itself, but just to leave it like it is. So the first one is just like, this is the water treatment process in a normal way. Sorry, whoops. The water treatment process, and this is the way it works. And then we said, okay, next thing is what would happen? Just hypothetical, like what would happen if you decide to take out the buildings on which the municipality says we cannot make exemptions for property tax, because basically you say you don't need these buildings for the water treatment process. Is there actually a process still going on? And well, of course, it was the second slide. It's quite difficult to have a water treatment process if you just have these buildings added. And you can see, because already like the first step in the process was already involved with 4 buildings who were not part, according to the municipality, to the water clearing process. So this was shown to the judge by the lawyers from my firm, and of course the lawyers from the municipality weren't too glad with been shown this visualization, but they couldn't do much about it because all the content, it was already there has been there's no new content in it. It's just explained in a different way. And the judge asked them, like, is this factual correct? And they said, like, well, yeah, it's factual correct, but well, it's shown in a way that, and then the judge asked again, like, is this factual correct? And yeah, it is. So it could stay in the case, or in during the court, it could stay. And in the end, they started negotiating again with the water board, and came to finally to an agreement, which took 8 years. And these visuals were so, in some way, it was really a good showcase for visualization in litigation.
I absolutely love this case because it shows not only the power of visualization, but the transformative character that it can have in complex litigations. So, what we saw is that two sets of opposing lawyers and their own experts could have been like discussing this on and on forever, because the discussion was addressing perhaps the wrong issues, perhaps strategically from a side, choosing to pick things from a different perspective. But once you use demonstratives that leverage the intelligence that you have, you can literally show and not just tell what it is. So I think this case is particularly impressive, especially because the buildings that they were suggesting were not necessary for the water treatment, were the very first ones absolutely most necessary to the water treatment, and it would just not be possible to do the other steps without any of them. So it's not like it's a small impact, it's just absolutely inconceivable to do it without those buildings. So the first time you show me this case, I was like, everyone else in the world has to see this, because this is such a great use of design information. And I have no idea how much time was put into coming up with this visual, because, well, when we see it now, it looks simple enough for us to understand. But I am certain that everything that looks simple took forever to make, and all of the interviews that you must have had. So I'm so glad that you came to this conclusion, and that we know the results. We know they immediately entered negotiations after being shown this. So thank you so much for being able to share this with us, because this is such a great showcase, Kim.
Oh, you're welcome. It's I still, as I said already, I still love this case very much. And yeah, it's still within the office. It's still also like one of the, like, do you know the case of the property taxes? So yeah, it's fun. And on the other hand, it was hard because it happened already in 2018, and I haven't had a case which had that much impact as this one yet. So it was also one of its kind in some way. So yeah.
I don't know if you have another case to show us, but if you don't, I would like to take some questions from the audience. Is that okay?
I have another case, but it also depends on time, because I don't know how much time we still have left, and maybe it's better to use that time for questions than
yes.
the other case.
Perhaps we'll leave your second case for another opportunity, and whoever is with us, please drop a comment if you want to see another showcase on leveraging the usage of visualization for complex litigations. But since you're willing to take questions with us, Kim, I did have, and I will just remove the presentation from the screen so that we can address the questions.
And yeah.
Don't worry about it. We did have a question about the time invested. So the question we have is the time invested to create a document with visual components worth the outcome? This is the first part of the question. And the second part of it is, especially, are clients willing to pay for it? In your case, Kim, I don't think Kim is with us anymore. We think Kim accidentally dropped out of our webinar, but this is not an issue. I will continue to address some of the questions that we received, and I will address the questions for Kim later on. Worst case scenario, you can still drop your questions in the comments and
Sorry,
we'll address
Isabella,
them
I
afterwards. Hi,
was the
Kim,
wrong
you're back.
button.
We missed you. So, back to the question we were addressing. The question is the time invested to create a document with visual components worth the outcome? And are clients willing to pay for it?
It's changing. Let's say it this way, because what we notice a lot at Stibbe is that we offer it as a possibility, and then clients are really interested. But they also, when they have seen the results, they will come back and ask for it again, and they are willing to pay for it. And some clients are a bit more innovative than other clients and are willing to pay from the beginning already because they know the power of visualization and they see it as an addition to the possibilities other than something which will ask from, which will have them pay more. So it's really it differs per client, but I think especially because legal design is just getting more being more known and the possibilities of it are more shown around, that clients are eager to try out. In the end, they want results, and if legal design is giving them result, they're happy to pay for it. So.
And I think the case that you brought up with the municipality is a great showcase precisely because it does show the results. So no matter how much time you invested it in, just considering how much your client must have saved up in taxes, not paying for all of those buildings that were indeed involved in the water treatment part, I think the results are crystal clear as your visualization. That same person also asked if you have any time-saving tools in the field of legal design that you would recommend. Perhaps you as a designer know a few different tools that we normally use as lawyers.
That's a difficult one because, in the end, it comes back to what are you already using as a lawyer and what can you do within these possibilities. So, for example,
I think most
PowerPoint.
lawyers are just using Office and Word.
Yeah, but PowerPoint has some possibilities and already. But it needs time, and the programs I'm working with, they are not. That's really for designers because it takes years to be able to use them, and also there's the idea of which colors you use, how you build up visualization. Of course, all these things are there, and although there are these basic visualizations you can use, if you look up on Google infographic, you get like the infographics you basically can fill in. But on the level we work as lawyers, as designers, the expert level we're working on, you need to build your own visualization basically every time over again. Saying this, there are tools who, for example, really help me and the lawyers in the start of the process by making it possible for the lawyers to make timelines or structured charts from which I can work again and find like the visual importance in and explain better. But then they can make like the sketches already, and that's something you can see in legal tech, that there are companies working on making it easier for lawyers to sketch things so designers can take over and build a proper visualization from it.
But it's interesting that you mentioned how complex it is, because and this might be a perspective that we have in Brazil. So I don't know how much you know about the legal design sector in Brazil, but I feel like our works in legal design have been a little bit different from what I've seen in Europe. So this is one of the efforts we're trying to do, like bridging this gap between the Atlantic Ocean and bring information from other parts of the globe. Because in Brazil, a few projects have been too much simplified in a way that people think it is easy to do. And what you've shown us and what we do at Vita is very complex, actually. It looks simple, and I think that's why it is underestimated, because the final product always looks very simple, because that's the goal. You want it to be very accessible to your end user, and you want it to be easy to understand. But the truth is, there is a long line of production and thought process and complex tools that are always involved in those projects. So I cannot imagine how many different tools you may have used for that single case alone, or how much time was invested in it. And
I think that's
that also works. We have a set of designers who are capable of using all of those tools, and then working with information designers that bridge the gap between the lawyers and the designers themselves.
Yeah, I think there are two, how do you call, two things I hear a lot considering legal design. One thing is that it's about simplifying, but it's not about simplifying, it's about clarifying. Information design is about clarifying complex information. We don't simplify it because we don't change the information. We just make it accessible. And the other thing is that lawyers often think that their work is not that important anymore, because, well, the designer is giving the visual and the client will love the visual and won't love our part of the work anymore. But that's not true either, because we cannot work with, there has to be a good basis. The content has to be excellent before we can do something with it. So often also they ask, like, well, does it mean that there is going to be less text? Yeah, possibly. It's up to the client. The client can decide to read less text, but the text is still necessary sometimes to be able to understand things, but we make the access to it easier. And that's big difference in looking at design as something which is fun, which is easy, which is simple, to information design as I practice. So yeah.
I love that you said that it is not simplifying, it is clarifying, because this is something that is very difficult for people to grasp. We're not just making it simple, we are clarifying technical information, which is even harder to do, because you cannot get rid of the technicalities that must be in place. You actually have to make it clear and not just simple. Plus, there's so many legal cases. I come from the arbitration field, where simplification is not always an option. It is not always, it is actually very rarely a viable way. We are dealing with complex cases that are huge. You have so many different petitions in place and so many different facts throughout a very long timeline, and then trying to simplify that would just be such a hustle. But clarifying it is always possible, and I see how works like the one you've shown us are so good and combine so well with that sector. And moving forward to our probably very last questions. It is a two-parted question. I'll let you answer the first one and I'll answer the second half. So the first half for you, Kim, is what are the emerging perspectives on the adoption of legal design or visual law within corporate legal departments and the drafting of corporate contracts? Additionally, and this I'll answer myself, how is Vita contributing to the preparation of lawyers for this involving practice?
So just for the question, how this is about working together. How do we?
Yes. So, what are the emerging perspectives of legal design within corporate legal departments and drafting corporate contracts? So, I think this is more about corporations, corporate contracts. I don't know if Stiebe has worked with clients that do work in legal departments and then those contracts themselves, but perhaps you have some experience with the contracts that Stiebe has drafted for themselves or clients.
And in the Netherlands, we have a few really good companies and freelance designers who are really on the contract design. And contract design is legal design, but it's also like information design, more or less a bit like a different kind. It's communication design, which I'm really known to as well. But within Stiebe, we don't really get these kind of projects often. I did, I think, 2 or 3 since I started working with Stiebe, because this is something which is really easy to be outsourced by the client to another company, not necessarily a quite expensive law firm as we are. So there has been questions about us being able to help them, but often they decide on using a freelance designer or something, or one of the really contract design companies which are already there in the Netherlands. So
it's interesting to see how different countries start dividing themselves in different ways, because here in Brazil, what we do at Vita is actually attending to all of those different projects. So, but then you are a information designer within a law firm, so that's still a little bit different from what we are. We are a specialized legal design company working to those projects. So I think some of those contracts would go to the Vita version in the Netherlands. And hence, this is something that we do. And answering the very last question, how is Vita contributing to the preparation of lawyers for this evolving practice? So in Vita, we do have the Vita class option. We do give in-house company trainings for lawyers who want to further elaborate their skills on legal design. And I think people in the position as Kim and our designers will be very happy if more lawyers start doing some training in design, information design, and legal design, because it makes the conversation much easier and the preparation and briefings much easier when people start grasping different areas of knowledge that are not necessarily just law. So we have those in-house trainings on legal design and visual law that help lawyers prepare. The idea here is not that they'll replace the legal designer themselves, because that will take a little bit further training. But then we do have trainings for that. And we're also in the verge of launching further more trainings for your legal design journey. So just stay tuned for further trainings that will be launched very soon, because we hope that more people can access this knowledge and perhaps start working on something as amazing as what Kim has shown us. So Kim, thank you so much for your presentation. It has been such a huge pleasure listening to it. On full disclosure, I've already seen this presentation from Ken, this very specific case, which is why I invited her in the first place. I really wanted to show the world this case because it is so amazing, and it's always so fun to watch you talk about it, Kim. So thank you so much. And thanks for Stiebe to be willing to share all this information and this case in particular with us. We learned a lot from it.
Well, thank you, Isabella, for thinking of this case and inviting me to tell about it again, because I love talking about this case as often as possible. And thank you for giving me the possibility also to talk to this audience. So thank you.
Well, if you've kept up with us until the very end, it has been a pleasure hosting you here with us. Kim, you are always invited to come to talk to us about other cases, about the very soon to be book, perhaps just dropping a few ideas in air so that the audience has something to chew on. So thank you so much for this. It has been a pleasure. And thank you who has watched us until the very end. It has been a pleasure hosting you with us this morning/afternoon. And we hope to see you again on our next webinar. Thanks, Kim. Goodbye.
Bye.